faithfully sharing value and interpreting great books from around the world. Hi, this is Sally with Book Talk. Today, the book I'm interpreting for you is 99 Kinds of Garbage Plus One Brilliant Idea. Subtitle: A Quirky History of Inventors and Inventions. The title of this book comes from a quote by the great inventor Edison. He said, "An inventor only needs two things: garbage and imagination." Of course, things are definitely not that simple. This book aims to show readers the stories behind those inventions. The author of this book, Trevor Norton, is a professor at the University of Liverpool in the UK. After retiring, he and his wife live by the sea, specializing in writing and publishing many popular science books. As for the original intention of writing this book, Norton's exact words were, "Today's world is made up of countless great inventions, and tomorrow's world will be the same. Inventors deserve to be written about." Although this book is called a history, the introduction of inventions and inventors basically starts from the Industrial Revolution. Because before this, for the vast majority of inventions, it's impossible to determine the inventor's identity, who invented iron smelting, who invented pottery. It can only be summarized as the wisdom of the working people. Furthermore, in the author's view, only by turning ideas into reality does one qualify as an inventor. For example, Da Vinci did fill his notebooks with brilliant ideas. He even designed tanks and helicopters, but the technological level at the time couldn't produce them. It wasn't until the Industrial Revolution that people had the ability to turn some of the inventor's wildest ideas into reality. Also, starting from the Industrial Revolution, the number of human inventions saw explosive growth. To organize these inventions, the book's content is divided into over 20 themes. In each theme, the author strings together related inventions and inventors' stories. I will sort out for you the two hidden main lines in the book, allowing you to examine the stories of inventions and inventors from a broader perspective. These two main lines are the life cycle of an invention and the growth transformation of an inventor. First, let's talk about the life cycle of an invention. Looking through the history of inventions, we find that an invention is actually like life. It similarly goes through the processes of birth, growth, maturity, and decline. I will use the telephone as an example to show you the complete life cycle of an invention. When talking about the birth of the telephone, we must first tell the story of a tragic figure named Antonio Meucci. This Meucci was an Italian electrician. In the mid-19th century, people had this superstition that electric shocks could cure various diseases. Meucci made a living by giving people electrotherapy treatments. Once, he attached electrodes to a patient and went to the next room to adjust the switch when he was shocked to discover the patient's screams coming through the wires. Meucci immediately realized this discovery had major significance. He thought he might invent a talking telegraph machine. Later, Meucci moved to America and continued his research. After over a decade of effort, Meucci kept improving his device. Rumors say he even installed a functional telephone line between his home and workshop. In 1871, Meucci filed a caveat with the Patent Office called Talking Telegraph. A patent caveat was a temporary declaration for inventions still in development, not yet patent ready, but gave applicants priority rights for a certain period. The protection period was typically 1 year. Caveats were much cheaper than patents but required annual renewal. Theoretically, with this caveat, Meucci just needed to patiently refine his model to secure the telephone patent. However, disaster struck unexpectedly just as Meucci was on the verge of success. During a boat trip, a boiler explosion killed 120 people and severely burned many others. Meucci was among the critically injured. This already struggling man faced worse. Exorbitant medical bills drained his funds, leaving him unable to renew the caveat. Thus, Meucci missed his chance to obtain the telephone patent. For inventors, luck is indeed a crucial factor. In inventing the telephone, luck favored Alexander Graham Bell. Bell came from a British family of speech therapists and was naturally highly sensitive to sound. As an adult, he secured a position at Boston University teaching deaf individuals to speak. The famous writer Helen Keller, author of The Story of My Life, was Bell's student. While teaching, Bell also became deeply interested in electrical research. For example, he improved the telegraph system and created something called the harmonic telegraph, which could send and receive multiple signals simultaneously, boosting telegraph office efficiency. Of course, he continued his acoustic research too. Bell used rubber membranes to simulate human throats, studying their sound production patterns. Then he started thinking, air could make rubber membranes vibrate to produce sound. So, if electricity could make metal membranes vibrate, could sound be transmitted through electric current? That's how Bell came up with a new idea, transmitting sound through wires. To pursue this research, Bell hired an assistant named Thomas Watson. Through repeated experiments, they discovered that when electric current flowed or stopped in copper coils, the coils produced sound. By generating continuous current, they could produce sustained tonal vibrations, essentially transmitting speech electrically. Following this principle, they kept refining their telephone prototype. Then one day during an experiment, Bell accidentally spilled acid on his pants and immediately shouted, "Mr. Watson, come here, I need you." Downstairs, Watson rushed up yelling, "I heard your voice!" Thus, this ordinary plea for help became the first telephone conversation in human history. In 1876, Bell applied for the telephone patent.
Just hours after his patent application, Elisha Gray from Ohio filed a caveat for a similar telephone design.
The principles were similar, but Gray's design had better performance. So luck truly favored Bell. Bell smoothly navigated the invention's startup phase and secured the patent. Of course, he still faced challenges. Bell encountered the most common problem for new inventions. Nobody recognized its value. After patenting, Bell first tried selling telephone rights to a Canadian businessman. For exclusive UK rights, he asked only $150. But the businessman shook his head, thinking the telephone wasn't worth that price. That businessman was rejecting what would become the most profitable patent of the era. Next, Bell offered his patent to Western Union, which dominated America's telegraph industry. Obviously, Western Union was ideal for promoting telephony. They had existing telegraph networks that could be adapted for telephone use with minimal modifications. But Western Union evaluated Bell's invention as having too many flaws to be considered a formal communication method. If this device holds no value for our company, people couldn't grasp the significance of new inventions because early versions often underperformed existing products. Such examples are common. Early cars were far less efficient than horse carriages, being noisy and unsafe. They required 5 hours of repair for every hour of operation. After the startup phase, a good invention enters its growth period. During this phase, the invention gets refined, and some of the public becomes willing to try the new product. Now, Bell's telephone design had many flaws, the biggest being extremely weak signals. To make a call, people had to scream themselves hoarse into the mouthpiece. Soon, David Hughes from England designed a microphone-like device to enhance sound capture. As he put it, this device could even capture the footsteps of a fly. Moreover, in Bell's original design, the mouthpiece and earpiece were combined, causing major inconvenience. Users had to constantly shift the device between mouth and ear. And early manuals even emphasized, don't listen with your mouth or speak with your ear. Some customers bought 2 telephones, one for speaking, one for listening. Later, Edison improved the telephone's mouthpiece, making it more user-friendly. After multiple refinements, the telephone evolved from a prototype to a mature product, but quality improvements alone weren't enough. An invention's growth requires the maturation of the entire ecosystem. If you can't connect to your desired recipient, the telephone is useless. Hence the need for a hub to connect different telephones. The telephone exchange. You might have seen telephone exchanges in old films. They're panels with many wires, each representing a phone line. When someone picked up a phone, The corresponding light on the panel would illuminate. The operator would answer, ask who you wanted to call, then plug into the recipient's jack. In 1878, the first telephone exchange was installed in Connecticut, but requiring third-party mediation made calls inconvenient and risked privacy breaches because operators had to listen to entire conversations to disconnect lines afterward. Almon Stroger from Kansas distrusted operators. Notably, Stroger was an undertaker who built a machine based on his vision.
With this machine, pressing buttons in the correct sequence sent pulses that rotated components to automatically connect the right lines.
This automatic switchboard replaced telephone operators, making calls efficient and private. Thus, with improved telephones and automatic switching systems, the invention entered maturity as Americans embraced this communication method. Back in 1885, Edison predicted relay stations might enable nationwide calls, a prophecy soon fulfilled. Telephone lines spanned major U.S. cities, enabling the first transcontinental call. In 1915, it connected Bell on the East Coast with Watson on the West Coast. The first coast-to-coast call repeated Bell's plea, "Mr. Watson, come here. I need you."
By then, America had over 7 million phones, with Bell's company becoming its largest and most profitable.
It became AT&T, today's telecommunications giant. To honor Bell, all U.S. phones silenced their rings for 1 minute upon his death. Of course, every invention eventually declines. As we all witnessed or experienced, landlines faded while mobiles rose, using electromagnetic waves. The first commercial mobile phone came from Motorola researchers. Martin Cooper, Motorola, starting with radios and walkie-talkies before entering telecom. In April 1973, Martin's first call after building the prototype was to his rival. Joel Engel, a researcher at famed Bell Labs, received that call, marking the mobile era's dawn. Compared to today's phones, this one was incredibly bulky. It contained 30 circuit boards, offered just 30 minutes of talk time, yet required 10 hours to recharge. After decades of refinement and development, mobile phones have become a part of our lives. Of course, the story continues to repeat itself. With the rapid development of communication technology, the transition from 3G to 4G to 5G eras, and the emergence of various new communication inventions like email, SMS, QQ, and WeChat. And it's foreseeable that these inventions, like the telephone, will go through phases of startup, growth, maturity, and decline, with new technologies emerging in the future. Eventually, they'll be disrupted. That's the inevitable trend of invention. All right, I've covered the life cycle of inventions. Now let's chat about the inventors behind them. As emphasized by the author, behind great inventions are great inventors, and the image of inventors in the public mind.
Maybe like Archimedes, who suddenly had an inspiration while bathing, ran naked into the street shouting, "Eureka!"
In the distant past, such flashes of insight might have been necessary, but as time progressed, the inventor community has gradually evolved. And by comparing different historical periods, we can summarize 3 trends in inventors' growth transformation: team collaboration, specialization, and theory-first approach.
Next, we'll tell stories of inventors to illustrate each of these 3 trends.
First is team collaboration. Before the 19th century, most scientific research or inventions relied on individual smarts, or at most, hiring 1 or 2 helpers like Bell mentioned earlier. But with the advent of the Second Industrial Revolution, this situation changed rapidly. It shifted from individuals working solo to teams with division of labor. The most representative example of this is the king of inventions, Thomas Edison. TC, in our impression, Edison was a tech nut, tinkering with inventions day and night, achieving fame through talent and hard work. As his famous quote goes, "Genius is 1% inspiration and 99% perspiration." But what he didn't mention is that he had 200 assistants. Edison loved research from a young age, and after becoming an adult, He worked as a telegraph operator. His early inventions in electronics and telecommunications, like the electric vote recorder and stock ticker, gradually built his reputation and money. With his career taking off, Edison bought a big barn in Menlo Park, New Jersey, and turned it into the world's first fully equipped, large-scale laboratory. He also hired numerous researchers for technological development. With his own team, Edison became more confident. He declared his goal was to invent small devices every 10 days and major ones every 6 months. Most famous among these was the incandescent light bulb. The incandescent bulb wasn't actually Edison's invention. Canadians Henry Woodward and Matthew Evans created it first, but lacked funds for production, and their filament design had such short lifespan, it was impractical. So Edison immediately recognized the bulb's commercial value, decisively bought their invention, and assigned a 20-person research team to improve it. This process gave birth to Edison's most celebrated story, the search for the ideal filament. Edison tested hundreds of materials, including 50 bamboo varieties, and even a worker's beard. Actually, most experiments were done by the research team. Edison supervised, even installing an organ in the lab. When employees tired, someone would play the organ to boost morale.
Of course, Edison demanded much from himself, often working day and night.
Finally, Edison's technicians found suitable materials allowing bulb lifespan to reach 1,500 hours. Edison was truly an exceptional leader who attracted brilliant talents like Nikola Tesla, inventor of AC electricity, who once worked for him. Though researchers did outstanding work, legally all patents belonged to Edison personally. With his team's help, Edison filed nearly 1,100 patents in his lifetime. Looking back, Edison could sense technological trends, had sharp business instincts, and fully leveraged team power. Combined, these qualities made Edison history's most successful inventor. When he died, all electric lights in America dimmed for 1 minute in mourning. The second transformation trend for inventors is increasing specialization. We often hear about amateurs creating inventions. Even in the 20th century, many major inventors weren't formally trained. For example, as mentioned earlier, the inventor of the automatic telephone exchange, Stroger, was an undertaker, and the inventor of Morse code, Morse, he was originally a painter. The inventor of television was a shoe polish salesman. But as scientific research becomes more complex and social division of labor deepens, even within the same discipline, different subfields can feel worlds apart.
Therefore, amateurs are increasingly overwhelmed, and truly important breakthroughs still rely on professionals.
A classic example is the story of penicillin.
As one of the most commonly used antibacterial drugs, penicillin has saved countless lives.
And this invention initially came from a serendipitous discovery. In the mid to late 19th century, with the advancement of medical technology, people began research on bacteria. Major hospitals established their own bacteriology laboratories. At St. Mary's Hospital in London, their main research subject was Staphylococcus, which can cause pneumonia and abscesses. At this hospital, there was a bacteriologist named Alexander Fleming. In 1928, Fleming extracted some Staphylococcus samples from a patient, planning to culture them for study later. But after a few days, he found the sample was contaminated, growing a large patch of mold. The mold likely came from the floor below Fleming's, as similar strains were being cultivated there. Spores probably drifted through an open door into his lab. This should have been a failed experiment, but Fleming noticed a strange phenomenon. Near that mold patch, no other bacterial colonies appeared. After careful study, he confirmed that this bacteria-fighting mold was penicillium. He named the antibacterial substance secreted by penicillium as penicillin. Fleming wanted to extract penicillin further, but he lacked relevant experience. Throughout his career, he had always researched alone, and this time he didn't want to ask other experts to help extract and isolate penicillin. So he abandoned the project, only writing a paper reporting his discovery without further development. However, Fleming's discovery caught the interest of 2 other British scientists. pathologist Howard Florey and biochemist Ernst Chain, who were collaborating to find a substance that could eliminate diseases without harming patient cells. Although Fleming couldn't extract penicillin, Florey and Chain had been refining their expertise in this field for years with mature theoretical systems and techniques.
Soon, the two deduced penicillin's chemical structure and figured out methods to extract and purify it.
After that, with help from British chemist Norman Heatley, they also invented ways to increase penicillin production.
At that time, during World War II, penicillin's emergence immediately played a vital role, saving countless injured soldiers and civilians. From discovering penicillium mold, to purifying penicillin, to scaling up production, every step in penicillin's development was driven by professionals and influenced human history in just decades. Besides teamwork and specialization, the third transformation trend for inventors is theory first. Actually, this part debates whether invention or theory comes first, kind of like the chicken or egg question. In early stages, inventions often appeared before theories. 2,000 years ago, people could forge high-quality ironware based on experience alone.
But only with the rise of modern metallurgy did people figure out how to control alloy ratios and microstructures to boost material performance.
For example, when Watt started improving the steam engine, the three laws of thermodynamics didn't exist yet, and he didn't know how to calculate thermal efficiency. For a long time in history, people focused more on an invention's practical value, not caring much about its underlying mechanisms or theoretical principles. This led to many outstanding inventions being discovered accidentally by inventors. But nowadays, new inventions often rely more on basic theoretical research and breakthroughs. Just look at recent Nobel laureates and you'll find proof of theory guiding invention. For instance, the 2019 Nobel Chemistry laureate Goodenough studied lithium cobalt oxide's properties in the 1970s, which guided Sony to invent the lithium-ion battery. The 2007 Nobel Prize in Physics went to scholars of giant magnetor systems. Their theory boosted computer hard drive storage by orders of magnitude. End quote. There are many similar examples, and the most convincing might be the atomic bomb. The early 20th century was an era of explosive growth in physics, where countless brilliant scholars emerged in just decades. Among the most widely known of these is Albert Einstein. One of Einstein's most significant achievements is the mass-energy equivalence equation, E equals mc squared. This simple formula reveals that even tiny amounts of mass contain enormous energy. Of course, harnessing this energy required further theoretical physics breakthroughs. Key contributors included physicists Lise Meitner and Otto Hahn. Because they deciphered the physical process of nuclear fission, their research showed bombarding uranium with protons makes its nucleus unstable, causing fission. During fission, a small mass portion converts to energy and releases, with the mass-energy equation providing the framework and fission research pointing the way. These theoretical breakthroughs ultimately paved the path for atomic bomb development. Of course, theory alone wasn't sufficient. To build the bomb, the U.S. launched the Manhattan Project in 1942, employing 130,000 people: physicists, engineers, clerks, construction workers, and soldiers. Costing over $2 billion, the atomic bomb wasn't credited to any single inventor, but embodied theory-guided invention, teamwork, and specialization. Despite trends toward teamwork, specialization, and theory first, exceptional inventors still demand immense time, money, and labor. For example, James Dyson spent 15 years developing his vacuum cleaner, creating 5,000 prototypes. Great inventions and inventors propel human society forward. The internet, batteries, smartphones, mobile payments. We're fortunate to witness new inventions emerge and spread. Perhaps soon, controlled nuclear fusion, synthetic biology, bionic humans. These new concepts will reshape our world. Well, that's 99 kinds of garbage plus one brilliant idea. That concludes our interpretation. Reading notes are below the audio. Until next time.